Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We offer stories of infidelity, betrayal, and redemption. Please like and subscribe. Cheers. Now, on to today's story. Online Journal Day 245, Mimi and Me Part 2. The rest of the conversation, which lasted something like 2 hours. None of this is verbatim, it's all paraphrasing except some of it. Just getting it all down so I can process it when my mind is better. I'd like to say I took that well, but I didn't. I argued and I got heated. I asked her what the hell does she know about me? I think I sounded like Tyra Banks, cause I stopped myself before going into the, you don't know me, my life, what I do or go through. Cause I realized I was just being hella defensive. Mimi just grinned at me with the knowing look that's super frustrating and said, I know plenty. Which I remember exactly, cause I stopped to think about it. Who says plenty instead of a lot? I asked if she's saying I'm whining and she literally hit me. Like punched me in my shoulder. She said no. That I'm not perfect, but I need to stop trying to find ways to make things my fault. Mimi told me that I always do that. That I always make it about it being my fault. She says I like when things are my fault, cause then I won't have to admit that something was outside of my control. That I can have this illusion that I could have done something differently or better. That I could have changed something and therefore I can do something about it. Cause lack of control terrifies me. She says sometimes bad shit just happens and you're left with the mess. There isn't shit I could do about it. Mimi told me that there are individual things I could have done better or different, but I couldn't be a better husband to prevent Amy from doing stupid shit. That no one can. That if I had been firmer about the things I wanted and how I demanded myself be treated, be a tyrant and pretty much pushed my weight around to get what I want, or if I would have been full simp and gave Amy everything on a platter, it would not have changed much. Amy would have still had those insecurities to deal with and would have still dealt with them poorly. I'm not responsible for Amy's actions. I ask her what is she saying, that there ain't nothing we can do to fix the relationship. That people are just who they are? She again sighs and says no. Just that I'm approaching it from the wrong angle. Mimi admitted that she's hardly ever seen a relationship survive a true infidelity. And then paused and said, this can be considered a true infidelity, because it's the lack of trust that's the problem, not the act. Swingers and polys, and others don't have the problem because of the acts or anything. I don't have a problem with the acts. Amy betrayed my trust, manipulated her best friend, lied, hid things, and was generally shitty and deceitful. She says you can't unknow that. That she can't unknow that and she is processing it for herself. She then admitted that she loved Amy, but was very furious at her for everything that went down, and how it caused so many issues in her own relationship and friendship with me. That the past year has been like holding her breath all year, waiting for the walls to come down. That she wanted to scream at Amy and cuss her out, but instead, just tried to be honest with her. That I should be honest with her. Amy doesn't need us to coddle her, or chastise her, but to be real with her. Mimi said she wanted to be real with me. She told me what I already know, that Amy comes crying to her about this whole thing and how hard this is for her. That she's always torn between consoling her friends and wanting to scream what the hell did you expect. She says that I have every right to pack up and move back north, cause she knows I don't wanna be in the south anyway. But she believes Amy and I can make this work, and we should because we love each other, and the crime isn't great enough to not try and salvage that. She then said if I found out Amy was ducking Buff Doug, or Caleb, or if she had gone and ducked that guy on the phone, then yeah, she wouldn't have an argument. She's not a big advocate of staying with cheaters. She's been there, done it, it's not a good look, and she wouldn't blame me if I just yelled duck everyone and go do me for a change. But my situation isn't exactly that. I'm told that with our unique situation, there's some wiggle room and some work if we're Amy and I are willing to put it in. I asked the question I've wanted to ask most other men who decide to reconcile: why is it my job to put the work in? I didn't duck up. And she answered, it's not, but I can't expect someone to work to redeem themselves and reconcile if all they'll get out of it is an angry man who is just waiting for them to duck up reasonably enough to call it quits. She says if that's what I plan to do, then I should just move on. That I deserved to be happy, and Amy deserved to deal with the consequences of her actions, but that shouldn't be forever. Mimi suggested I not focus on reconciling the infidelity. She said she knows how it goes and how most folks can't survive, but she is hoping my circumstances are different enough to not have that linger as something in my head. Like being treated like a fool or inferior. Like the people involved knew you would be hurt but did it anyway. The idea of some other guy laughing at you cause apparently he's so great your wife is willing to throw everything away for him. How it makes you feel small. She said that's not something I have to worry about here. Mimi then pointed out that she too was the fool here, and she certainly never thought of me as stupid or inferior. That I don't have to worry about that, or worry about Amy thinking that. Amy selfishly put her own sense of self-worth ahead of our relationship, and that's terrible, but even more terrible is I probably wasn't truly happy to begin with. That I never demanded that Amy match my effort, or come close, to what I do to make her happy. And that I need to either make the changes so that isn't the case, and that's how I move forward, or I go find some pretty little Asian otaku who will. Mimi told me she talks to Amy about this often and used to talk to me about deeper things often. That I talk an awful lot and tend to overshare when someone lets me get going. When I'm self-conscious, I keep things bottled up. But when I'm comfortable, she hears everything, and I had always been comfortable with her. She also said she didn't mind me talking cause I always have interesting things to say. But that there wasn't really much new under the sun with me until now. That this thing with the camming was the first new issue me and Amy have had in years in our boring little homebody lives. It's always the same. She then starts ticking off her finger. Amy is hard-headed and stubborn, doesn't like to listen. Amy has a problem showing appreciation. She said it's not that Amy doesn't appreciate me, it's just Amy is terrible at showing it, because Amy is the type of person who requires you to tell them or ask them to do anything. Mimi says Amy has always been that way. It's not that Amy doesn't do what you ask her to do, it's that she's like a goldfish that's been hit in the head. You have to retell her the same things all the time, which gets frustrating as hell. I actually couldn't agree more. Mimi pointed out that everything I do has meaning and purpose. That I'm never just doing shit because. It's because it's fun, or I need to. I can explain what I'm doing and why. What I'm thinking, why I did something. She says Amy's often not really thinking about anything. That she's often reactionary and needs desperately to be led, but resents the idea that she does. But obviously does need direction. She then gives me a look and says, your wife's kind of a ditz. I don't know whether or not to be offended, because I've heard Mimi say this to Amy's face multiple times. For a while she just finishes up what she's making. Fajitas actually. They were good, but could have easily been better. I think you marinate fajitas for a while if you want that meat to be good, especially chicken. And I was not a big fan of the tortillas she bought, but they were good and I was thankful. She sits down next to me and we eat for a bit before she continues. I'm told that if I don't think the two of us can make it, I need to get out. She says that I never wanted to come to VA and leave friends and family behind for Amy, but I did that because of love. She said she knows I still love Amy and always will, but if I'm going to torture myself for not being perfect and in turn torture Amy because I resent her for bursting my bubble, then it's not going to work. It will be toxic. She says I deserve to be happy and I need to figure out if that is with Amy. That my problem will arise here and in any relationship, because I can't tie my happiness to the happiness of someone else. I have to be happy with myself and about myself. I can't just use my partner's happiness and contentment as a gauge of whether or not I did a good job. She says I'm like a child who is play fighting or getting yelled at. If the person is frowning, I think it's bad. If they are smiling, I think it's good. That my perspective of what's going on relies too heavily on what I'm seeing in other people. She says when kids play and roughhouse, when they fall off something, before they decide whether or not they should cry or laugh, they look around. If their parents or people look concerned, they are more likely to cry. Same thing with being loud and yelling. I ask her if she's telling me to break up with Amy. She looks sour and shakes her head. It ain't that easy. Everyone wants it to be easy, this or that. But it ain't easy and I can't tell you what to do. She tells me she wants more than anything for me and Amy to work it out. That she thinks I can if I can get past a few things. I ask again why I need to get past anything, but she says I'm in my own way. Says I spent years fostering an environment where I let Amy get away with little and great things that irk the shit out of me, and now I expect her to fix and change them in less than a year's time. That I have to allow for at least half that time for some improvement, and give Amy the opportunity to make those improvements. Or I can say duck everyone and go take care of myself for a change. She said I'm cuter than I think and look great having lost a lot of weight, down to 226 right now. Mimi says someone else will be happy to have me if that's what I want, and I should consider what's best for me. That if I'm not happy with Amy, or in VA, which I often complain about being a terribly boring and sleepy place, then I should pursue what makes me happy. She would not fault me. She then gave me a kiss on the forehead and said that she hoped though that I would seriously give working things out with Amy a try. She said I'm not stupid and I knew who and what Amy was when I married her. That deep down inside I'm not worried about her cheating on me or doing something stupid like this again. That it is always possible, you never really know what the future holds, but that she didn't think it was likely. She told me my concern is that Amy did not nut up and do better when I was trying to be Superman, and now I'm exhausted and unwilling to be Superman. Unwilling to let things slide, and I'm worried that if she wouldn't do for what I considered the best version of myself, what would she do for something less? I almost cried, cause, the truth is that is something that worries me. A WS had you, someone without a grudge, who did their best, and they still strayed or ducked up. Now your relationship is imperfect and you are untrusting, you are not the same person they ducked off on. Why would that person be enough to keep them straight and narrow when you weren't enough to begin with? Mimi's answer is because you can't be dicks to people, but you can't be overly kind to them either. She did a bad Yoda impression and said in all things, moderation and balance is required. I told her her Yoda impression is bad and that I hoped baby Grogu dies. I don't mean that second one, but I know she's big into the damn baby Yoda. We laughed and bantered and I promised to consider her advice if she never bought wheat tortillas again. They were awful. She promises, and we say our goodbye and I am left with a lot of things to consider. Consider moving to where you want to and ask Amy to decide whether she wants to follow you. Only if we split. I spent too much on this damn house. I'm just not 100 with a city that closes at 7 p.m. Mimi brought some good insight to the table. She knows each of you and she clearly has some relevant wisdom and experience to share. You should definitely give serious thought to her words. But she is still bringing her own bias to this party. To her credit, she acknowledged that and said that she really hopes that you and Amy work it out. I'm just suggesting that you filter her advice for that bias. As you reflect on her advice, I suggest that you remove Amy from the equation. Instead, look for the insight that Mimi brought about you, the things that you will need to do for yourself regardless of whether you stay with Amy or not. Those are the things that you can control. While you are doing that, try to let go of the idea of solving the outcome. Focus on the process, the steps that you know that you need to take for yourself, your own journey of improvement. As you move further along that path, I think it will become easy for you to see if Amy's path has aligned with yours or diverged in some other direction. Then you'll be able to make a decision. As a brief aside, I know that you aren't writing these for anyone other than yourself. But I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. You and I have some similarities in perspective, though we come from very different backgrounds and are at different stages of life. Nonetheless, I enjoy learning your thoughts about the world. Thank you for sharing them. Sounds like Mimi really does get things. I mean, at the end of the day it's your choice and any advice you get is going to be biased, but heck, she admits that and she's right, this is your life and choice. But she does make a lot of really good points. You do tend to make other people's issues your fault or about you to try and retain some control. But yeah, Mimi did give some good wisdom and you should at least consider some of it. I happen to agree with a lot of what Mimi says in part 2. I've read all these posts and I don't get the feeling you hold yourself to blame for everything, but that you are very near to a perfectionist. I also disagree that you like it when things are your fault, because otherwise your control issues surface. Friends, family and people you work with come to you to get things done or get answers because 1, you're smart, and 2, you're good at problem solving. From what I've read, I don't think you're a control freak, but rather a lot of times the most competent person in the room, so people come to you for answers. Cause lack of control terrifies me. She says sometimes bad shit just happen and you're left with the mess. That's not exactly a news flash. I'm sure you've had horrible crap happen to you that was beyond your control, and I suspect that at your age you've learned what you can control and what you can't. You can't control other people, only yourself. Amy was going to do what she did regardless. I do agree that you've probably been too easy with her out of love, but that is a forgivable and a righteous mistake. You loved your wife so much that you let a lot of stuff slide. You monster. Mimi admitted that she's hardly ever seen a relationship survive a true infidelity. And then paused and said, this can be considered a true infidelity. I'm guessing you meant to say this can't be considered a true infidelity, and I kinda agree. Sorta. If you squint. At the very least it was an emotional affair with some cam guys, one in particular. She also later tells you that you have to give Amy time to improve. That sounds reasonable, and it is. But it's also a straw man argument. Mimi is saying that you need to give her at least half the time she became that way in order to fix those issues. So like 4 years to stop being a selfish, ungrateful person who can't show appreciation or whatever else she has a hard time expressing. Except right now you shouldn't be fully concentrating on those issues that bother you. Rather you should be addressing what she did and if the marriage can be saved. Not her selfish, self-centered habits. Now I expect her to fix and change them in less than a year's time. That I have to allow for at least half that time for some improvement, and give Amy the opportunity to make those improvements. Again, that shouldn't be the focus of the reconciliation. The lying and the cam stuff should be what you are working on. Re-establishing trust. Having her honestly answering if she thinks she will do this again. But you have to know why you did it to answer that question. Why should you be trying to reconcile and work on all the other personality and marriage issues all at once? There is a stat that gets used a lot in the relationship and advice readies. It takes 3 to 5 years to get over infidelity. I've also read for 3 to 6 years. That doesn't mean you forget about it. It just means you aren't going over and over the cheating in your mind every hour of every day. You probably never forget, as Mimi pointed out. I'm sure you can fix this if you want, but you won't ever forget it. You will always remember what she is capable of for a little validation. Otherwise, I thought Mimi made some good points in this post, although I suspect you knew most of what she told you. Now your relationship is imperfect and you are untrusting, you are not the same person they ducked off on. Why would that person be enough to keep them straight and narrow when you weren't enough to begin with? Exactly. That's the gamble with all this. And Amy is already complaining, a lot. If I remember correctly, she was complaining about the terms of reconciliation after about 4 months. Honestly, from what I've read, I don't know if Amy has it in her either. She should be the one doing everything under the sun to regain your trust. She should be setting up the therapy, open phone GPS always on. Yet she is already crying to her friend after less than 8 months. Last comment, why did it take Mimi 8 months to come talk to you about what really happened? I know you've talked to her before, but this was the first time she brought up the fact that she totally overlooked all the red flags Amy was waving when they were doing the cam thing. If she suspected that Amy was being shady all along, then why is she just now telling you? She admits that she suspected something was off when they were doing the cams. Good luck. Man, I really finally got it when you explained that feeling of if you were your best and it wasn't enough. How can a less than best now ever be enough thing? Really leaves me something to think about. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Please comment, like and subscribe. Cheers. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are.